Hi, this is Marnock from Marnock Outdoors, and today, and actually over the course of the next couple days, I'm going to be making some underquilts and top quilts for hammock camping. My two kids that are in Scouts with me, they see me hammock camping, they really see that I enjoy doing it, they want to try it, but they don't have any insulation. And there are a lot of products on Amazon that you can get that are underquilts and top quilts, and they work fine, but I like to make stuff, and at the same time, I like to save money. So what I've done is I've ordered from Ripstop by the roll for each quilt, so I ordered 3 sets of this. I ordered 4 yards of 3.6 ounce per yard ClimaShield Apex. I also ordered 9 yards of 1.9 ounce per yard Ripstop nylon. And I did it in different colors because everybody wants their own color for their underquilt and top quilt. So let me get started on this, and I'll show you how I do this as we go along.
So what I've done, and it's hard to see because this fabric is almost the same color as the carpet, I've cut a 4 yard piece of the ripstop nylon and folded it in half. Then a 2 yard piece of the 3.6 ounce ClimaShield Apex, and I laid it over top. So what I'm going to do is on each of the two sides, I'm going to fold over all the parts. It's hard to do with one hand. Fold over all the parts like this, and then make a stitch. And what that's going to do is that's going to hold the ClimaShield in place against the other parts of the nylon.
So like I was saying, what that does is that holds the ClimaShield to the nylon, and it also seals up the edges, both of the long sides of the ripstop nylon. So all I have to do at that point is turn the entire thing inside out so that the ClimaShield is on the inside, and then finish up the one edge, just kind of like if you're making a pillow or a pillowcase. It's kind of the same idea. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. I'm going to get it all pinned together, and then I'm going to start stitching. Okay, so I'm skipping videotaping myself sewing because watching that's probably really boring. But what I did, you can see here, is I have that folded over, and I just did a single line stitch. Made sure to back stitch on the end so it doesn't come undone. And when we turn this inside out, what we'll have is a nice clean stitch that way, and that'll become the edge of our top quilt. So I'm going to go ahead and flip this inside out, and then I'll show you what I'm doing with the end to close it up. By the way, this is the top quilt. I like to make my top quilt first and then my under quilt. The top quilt's a little bit less difficult to make, and top quilt takes a little bit more with the channels that you have to stitch in, and it's a little more involved. So I like to make my top quilt first, gets me warmed up and ready to go, and then the under quilt will be after this.
So this is the open end of the top quilt that I'm making. There's the ClimaShield 3.6, and it's enveloped between the two layers of ripstop. So all I'm doing is I'm folding each side down, and I'm making sure that when I pin it that I get the ClimaShield in there so that it doesn't travel to the middle of the top quilt when I'm done. So once I get this done stitching it, or when I get done pinning it, then I'm going to run a stitch across it. After I do that, I'm going to run a couple more stitches about 6 inches in on the top, and mainly just on the top where the head goes, and then I'm going to close in the foot box, and I'll show you how to do that in just a moment.
Alright, so I got the bottom all stitched up. So what I'm going to do is I take the top quilt, and I know it's kind of hard to see in the small space I have, but I'm going to fold it in half, and then I'm going to go up about 18 inches on the side. This is, I might go a little further than 18 inches. It really depends on who you're making it for and how long their legs are. But this is how I make the foot boxes. I'm going to sew from here to the end corner first. So we'll do that, and then I'll show you the next step. Okay, so I've stitched up the two sides here, but the bottom is still open. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open it up so that that stitch is in the center. Alright? I'm going to sew it along the bottom so that that stitch is in the center, making sure to back stitch on both ends. And that's going to complete the foot box. After that, we just have to flip it right side in and let my daughter try it out.
So this is my daughter. She is demonstrating the underquilt. Lift your feet up so we can see. So her feet are in the foot box. There's plenty of room for her legs. It's not too tight in there. Quilt, as you see, right where the top of it is, I put a stitch across the top, and that keeps any of the fill or the climate shield from traveling down and bunching up in the middle.
I like using the Climate Shield. It's not overly heavy. It's a good insulation, and even when if it gets damp, hopefully it doesn't. But even when it does get a little bit damp, it still retains its heat value. It keeps you warm. So that's the top quilt, and probably not going to get started on the underquilt till tomorrow. Total, the top quilt took maybe an hour to make. It wasn't too bad. I kind of have it down to what I know what I'm doing with it. This is the third or fourth one I've made. So this is a 3.6 ounce Climate Shield top quilt, and that'll, my estimation, it'll get you down to about 40 degrees pretty comfortably. I have made one out of 5 ounce, and with that one, I've been down to 30, 20 degrees and still been plenty warm, and not had to like wear any other layers or anything like that while I was sleeping in my hammock. But it also makes sure you have to string it properly. So up next is the underquilt that matches this top quilt. All right, we're working on the underquilt now. And what I've done, and I'll show you in a second, is I have laid out the fabric. So I've got the 2 layers of ripstop with the insulation on top of it. And then I've also cut 2 little strips like this and double folded it, stitched it. We'll need those. And then 8 pieces of webbing. And this is just a cheap, I don't know, this might even be cotton webbing, but you could use cotton webbing, nylon webbing, any kind of webbing you can find. I got a big roll of this at a recycling, like a secondhand store for $5, so I'm using it because it's inexpensive and it's not too terribly heavy, but it's strong. And then I made 4 strips like this. They are half of the total width of the ripstop nylon, so I cut 2 6-inch sections of it off of the total width, and then I divided those in half, and then I just stitch the edges so that they won't fray. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put those folded in half, sandwiched between the 2 pieces of nylon, 2 pieces of ripstop nylon, and at the end of each of those, I'm going to put the piece of webbing, all of it facing inward, and then in between, in the very center, I'm going to put the small strip of ripstop nylon that I made. And what that'll do is that'll form the channels and a couple of basically the webbing loops that the shot cord or the bungee cord will go through to suspend it around the hammock. So I'm going to get that all pinned up and stitch it, and we'll show you that before I do.
Okay, so this is the underquilt, and as you can see, I've got the channels here, and then in the center of the 2 channels, I've got 2 of these loops, and then a third loop made out of the ripstop nylon. And then what I did is I folded in and stitched the both ends, and along that I put 5 of these loops. And that's what another piece of the shot cable is going to go through to hold the end together and support it. And then all the way around it, about 5 to 6 inches in, I just ran a stitch, did it on both ends, did it along the bottom, and what that does is on the off chance that the batting on the inside were to come loose from the very edge, that holds it in place.
Hi, so this is the finished underquilt, and this will be good to about I want to say about 40 degrees comfortably. Again, it depends on how you set it up and everything. I'm going to show you on the ends here. We've got on each end, when I folded it under, I put those 5 pieces of webbing. Sorry, I forgot the word there for a second. So I put the 5 pieces of webbing, and then I string them through, and when this pulls it up, and I put this way, when it pulls it up together, it keeps the end of that underquilt nice and closed up. So you can actually string that a little bit looser if you want to let a little bit air in. Let's say it's a really hot night, but not warm enough to go without an underquilt. But as you can see, I put the shot cord, so this is nice and springy. hangs under the hammock pretty well. The only thing I have left to do, and I should get them in the next couple days, is I actually was able to get some brand labels made. I'm really excited about this. I've been wanting to do for a little bit. So when I get my brand labels made, I'm going to sew them on probably right in the middle here so they're nice and visible and everybody knows it's a Marnock Outdoors underquilt. Alright, the only other thing I've done is I made, just with the leftover fabric, a simple stuff sack. Nothing real fancy, basically like a pillowcase with a drawstring at the end. And what I did, I couldn't find my cord stops. So instead, I'm going to have my wonderful assistant here hold this. Hold the top part up here. So what I did is I tied a knot much as if you were whipping a rope. So this, hold it, it'll slide just like a cord lock would, but at the same time this is actually a little bit more secure than the cord locks that you're able to buy for what are they, 10 for $2 or whatever. And it's just a piece of 550 cord, and if you've ever whipped a rope, like natural fiber rope, it's the same procedure. I just use 550 cord around the two pieces of 550 cord that make up the drawstring. So that was my build. I hope you enjoy it. If you have any questions, feel free to send me a message, and if you want one of these, let me know. I like making them.